The rain had not stopped for 3 days. Dark clouds covered the alien city, and the streets were filled with mud. Shops were closing one by one, their bright lights turning off. Most people hurried home, covering themselves with cloaks and hoods, but one man did not hurry. His name was Daniel, a human traveler who had been living in this city for only a few months. He worked small jobs, carried packages, fixed broken machines, anything that paid enough to buy food. Tonight he was tired, his boots heavy with mud, but something on the side of the street caught his eye. At first he thought it was only a pile of dirty clothes thrown in the corner, but then it moved slowly, weakly. Daniel stopped, his heart beating faster. He stepped closer and saw a figure, a woman, alien, her body covered in mud from head to toe. Her hair clung to her face like wet ropes, and her eyes were almost closed, as if she had no strength left. The crowd around her did not stop. Some aliens walked past quickly, some whispered in low voices, and some even turned their faces away. Nobody cared. Nobody helped. Daniel frowned, his boots sinking into the soft mud as he moved nearer. The woman raised her head just a little, and for a brief second their eyes met. Her eyes were bright under all that dirt, but filled with pain and hopelessness. Daniel froze. He felt something inside him stir. But then a voice from the crowd hissed at him. "Leave her, human. She is nothing. She is cursed." Another voice laughed. "Covered in mud like an animal, better she stays there." Daniel's fists tightened. He looked at the woman again. She was shaking from the cold, her hands pressed into the mud as if she could not even stand. He knew he should walk away just like everyone else. This was not his problem, not his world. But something in her weak, broken eyes did not let him move. He stepped forward, kneeling down in the mud, his clothes getting dirty. The woman flinched, her body pulling back as if she expected to be struck. Daniel slowly reached out his hand, his voice soft. "Hey, it's okay," he whispered. Though he was not sure she understood his language, the mud on her cheek was cold and thick. When he wiped it away, even a little, her skin beneath was pale and smooth, glowing faintly under the streetlights. Daniel felt his breath catch in his throat. She was not ugly, not broken. Underneath the mud was something almost beautiful. But her lips trembled and she whispered something too soft to understand. The crowd had noticed. Whispers grew louder. "He's touching her. Crazy human. What is he doing?" Daniel ignored them. He put his arm under her shoulder, trying to help her stand. Her body was light, too light, like she had not eaten in days. She coughed, her voice raw, and mud dripped from her clothes. He looked around. No one offered help, no one even moved closer. The city guards walked by at a distance, pretending not to see. Daniel felt anger rise inside him. He had seen poverty before. He had seen hunger before. But this was different. This was abandonment. This was cruelty. The woman tried to speak again, her voice trembling. "No, don't leave me. Dangerous." Her words were broken, but Daniel caught them. Dangerous? He looked at her closely, but she was only weak, starving, covered in filth. How could she be dangerous? Lightning cracked in the sky and rain fell. Harder, the mud around them turned into a river flowing past their boots. Daniel knew if he left her here, she would not survive the night. He took a deep breath and lifted her in his arms. Her body tensed, her muddy hands gripping his shirt weakly as if she could not believe someone carried her. The crowd gasped. Some shouted at him to stop. Some laughed. Some shook their heads. But Daniel did not care. He turned and began walking, carrying the alien woman through the rain. His steps were heavy, his clothes soaked, but he kept moving. As he passed under the neon lights of the city, he felt more eyes following him. Shadows in the alleys shifted. Whispers in strange languages spread. Something about this woman was not normal. Something about her made the crowd afraid. Daniel could feel it now. Taking her had already changed his life, and whatever secret she carried, he was now part of it. The woman rested her head weakly against his chest. Her voice was almost lost in the sound of the storm. "You don't understand," she whispered. "They will come for me." Daniel's jaw tightened. He did not know who they were, but as the rain poured harder and the night deepened, he felt it in his bones. This was only the beginning. The muddy street was not just a street tonight. It was the place where everything changed. Daniel's arms ached as he carried the alien woman through the rain. His boots splashed in the muddy water, and every step felt heavier. But he refused to stop. The marketplace was now far behind, and the voices of the crowd had faded. Only the sound of the storm remained, mixed with the shallow breaths of the woman in his arms. He reached the small old building he called home. The door creaked as he pushed it open, the hinges groaning like an old man's voice. Inside, the single lamp flickered weakly, casting a warm but fragile light. Daniel lowered her gently onto a wooden bench, the mud from her clothes staining the floor. For a moment she just sat there, silent and still. Her eyes darted around the room as if she was expecting someone to break in at any second. Daniel crouched in front of her, his hands resting on his knees. "You're safe here," he said, quietly, though even he was not sure if that was true. The woman trembled, her lips parting as if she wanted to speak, but instead she shook her head, mud dripping from her hair. Daniel fetched a bowl of clean water, setting it down beside her. He took a cloth, dipped it in the water, and gently touched her cheek. The first touch made her flinch violently. Her entire body tensed and she pulled back, pressing against the wall. Her breathing quickened, fear flashing in her eyes. Daniel raised his hands, showing he meant no harm. "It's okay. I won't hurt you," he whispered. Slowly, carefully, he brought the cloth back to her cheek. This time, she allowed it, though her eyes stayed locked on him. As the mud came off her skin, the faint glow beneath became clearer. Strange, silver-like, patterns curled along her jawline and neck. They looked like marks, ancient symbols alive with faint light. Daniel froze, staring at them. What are you?" he muttered under his breath. The woman closed her eyes tightly, a pained expression crossing her face. "You shouldn't see me," she whispered, her voice raw. Daniel ignored the warning, his hand steady as he continued to wipe the mud away. Her face slowly appeared beneath the dirt, delicate features sharper now. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, and her hair, once heavy with mud, revealed strands of silver white, glowing faintly in the lamplight. Daniel's heart thudded. She was beautiful, too beautiful to be left in the street like garbage. But it wasn't just beauty, it was something otherworldly, like she didn't belong in this broken, filthy city at all. When Daniel reached for her arm to clean it, she grabbed his wrist with surprising strength, her eyes wide, her voice urgent. "Don't stop. Please, if you keep going, they will find me faster." Her hand trembled on his wrist, her nails digging into his skin. Daniel stared at her, confused. "Who will find you?" he asked. She only shook her head, refusing to answer. The storm outside grew louder, thunder shaking the small house. Daniel tried to keep his focus. He wiped more mud away, revealing more of the strange glowing marks on her arms and shoulders. They weren't random, they formed patterns like a map or a seal. Daniel leaned closer, curiosity pushing him, but the woman quickly covered her skin with her hands, hiding the glowing marks. Her voice cracked. "Please, don't look." Daniel sat back, his chest tight with questions. He wanted to demand answers, but something in her trembling voice stopped him. Instead, he stood up, pouring her a cup of water. "Drink," he said softly, placing it in her shaking hands. She stared at the cup for a long time before finally taking a sip. The water dripped down her chin and she coughed weakly. Daniel sighed and sat across from her, watching silently. For the first time, he noticed her eyes clearly. They were not like human eyes, they were deep violet, glowing faintly in the dim light like twin stars hidden in the night sky. Daniel looked away, trying to calm his racing thoughts. He had lived among aliens for months now, but she was different, special, dangerous, and fragile all at once. Minutes passed, and slowly her breathing became calmer. Her shoulders relaxed a little, and she set the empty cup down. Then, in a voice barely louder than the rain, she whispered, "You should have left me." Daniel frowned, leaning forward. "Why?" Her eyes met his, filled with sorrow. "Because helping me means they will come for you too. And when they come, nothing survives." Daniel's heart skipped a beat. The way she said it, it wasn't just fear, it was certainty. Who were they? And why did everyone in the marketplace act like she was cursed? Before he could ask again, a noise echoed outside. Heavy footsteps in the mud, multiple voices speaking in low tones. Daniel's blood ran cold. He moved quickly to the window, pulling the curtain slightly. Dark shapes moved in the rain, armored figures with glowing weapons at their sides. They were searching, scanning the street. Daniel turned back, his voice urgent. "They're here for you, aren't they?" The woman's face went pale, her hands clutching the edge of the bench, tears mixed with the dirt still left on her cheeks. She nodded slowly, her lips trembling. "Yes. They never stop hunting me." Daniel felt his chest tighten. He had a choice now. Stay silent, give her up, and let the nightmare pass, or stand against whatever these hunters were. But as he looked at the fragile figure before him, glowing faintly even in her broken state, he knew walking away was no longer possible. The first touch had changed everything, and soon the hunters would force him to prove it. The storm outside raged like a beast, thunder rolling across the alien city. Daniel stood frozen by the window, his eyes locked on the figures moving through the rain. They carried strange lanterns that pulsed with blue light, scanning the streets as if sniffing for a scent. Every step they took left a glowing print in the mud, unnatural and cold. Daniel turned back to the woman. She was shaking, her eyes filled with terror, her hands clutched tight around her glowing arms. Her voice cracked when she spoke. "You must give me up. If they find me here, you will die." Daniel felt his chest tighten, but his voice came firm, steady. "I'm not handing you over." The word surprised even him. What was he doing? He had no weapon, no plan, only a fragile shelter with leaking walls, and yet he could not bring himself to abandon her, not after he had carried her out of the mud, not after that first touch. The woman shook her head, tears mixing with the dirt on her face. "You don't understand. They are not guards, they are hunters." Her voice lowered to a whisper as if the very word carried power. "They chase me across worlds. Once they find me, no wall, no army, no human can protect me." Daniel clenched his fists, his mind racing. He could run, leave her behind. But the thought twisted his stomach. Instead, he grabbed an old blanket and wrapped it around her trembling shoulders. Her body stiffened at his closeness, but her eyes widened at the small act of care. "Hide here," he said, pointing to the corner behind a broken cupboard. She hesitated, but the pounding of boots outside pushed her into action. She crouched, low, pulling the blanket tight, hiding her faint glow as best she could. The knock came like a hammer, shaking the thin door on its hinges. "Open!" a voice barked, metallic and sharp. Daniel swallowed hard, his palms sweaty. He forced himself to walk calmly to the door, though his heart pounded like a drum. When he opened it, rain splashed inside, and 3 armored figures stood before him, their faces hidden behind masks, their weapons glowing faintly in the stormlight. One leaned forward, scanning the room with a device that clicked with each movement. The tallest spoke. "Human. You are alone?" Daniel nodded quickly, keeping his voice steady. "Yes, just me." His throat felt dry, every muscle tense, the hunter's mask tilted slightly as if studying him. "There are traces of her here," the metallic voice said. "The marked one passed this way." Daniel forced a shrug, trying to appear bored. "Many people pass this street," he replied. "You're chasing shadows." The hunter stepped forward, his boots heavy on the wooden floor. His eyes, hidden behind the mask, scanned the room. Daniel's pulse raced. If they looked too closely, they would find her. The hunter stopped, his hand hovering over the cupboard. Daniel's stomach turned to stone, then thunder cracked again, shaking the walls. The hunter stepped back, his voice flat. "Be warned, human. If you hide her, you share her fate." Without another word, the hunters turned and disappeared into the storm, their glowing prints fading slowly in the mud. Daniel slammed the door shut, leaning against it, his whole body trembling. His breath came fast and sweat ran down his face despite the cold. Behind the cupboard, the woman slowly lifted her head, her violet eyes wide. "You lied for me," she whispered, disbelief in her tone. Daniel gave a small, shaky smile. Looks like it for the first time. Something changed in her expression. The fear was still there, but now a flicker of trust appeared. Her lips parted as if she wanted to thank him, but the words stuck in her throat. Instead, she lowered her gaze, clutching the blanket tighter. Daniel sat down across from her, rubbing his face with both hands. "What are those things?" he asked finally. Her voice came soft, almost breaking. "They are the shadow hunters, created by my own people to erase me." Daniel blinked, confused. "Erase you? Why?" Her hands shook as she pushed back the blanket, revealing the glowing marks on her arms. "These marks are the seal of inheritance. They mean I was chosen to lead, but others wanted power for themselves, so they cast me out." Daniel stared at the marks, the strange patterns that seemed alive with light. "So, they hunt you because you're royalty?" She flinched at the word, lowering her head. "I was," she whispered. "But now, I'm nothing. Abandoned, cursed, unwanted." Daniel leaned forward, his voice steady. "Not nothing. Not to me." The words hung heavy. In the air, the woman's breath caught, and she looked at him as if she didn't believe what she had heard. No one had spoken to her like that in a long time, maybe never. Outside, the storm continued, and distant voices of hunters echoed in the night, but inside the small shelter, something fragile had begun to grow. Trust, hope, maybe even the spark of something stronger. Daniel knew this night was not over. The hunters would return, but for now, he had made his choice. He would protect her, no matter the cost. And deep down, he felt that this woman, this abandoned alien, would change his life forever. The storm eased by dawn, but the city was still wet and heavy with silence. Daniel had not slept, his eyes fixed on the door, listening for the return of the hunters. Every small creak of the wooden walls made his heart jump, but the woman sat quietly, her blanket wrapped tightly around her, her violet eyes watching him. When the first pale light of morning slipped through the cracks, Daniel finally spoke. "You have to tell me the truth," he said, his voice low but firm. "Who are you, really? Why are they after you?" The woman lowered her gaze, her hands clutching the blanket until her knuckles turned white. For a long time she said nothing, as if the words themselves were dangerous. Finally she whispered, "My name is Solara. I was born to the royal house of Valari." Daniel blinked, the name unfamiliar, but he could see in her trembling hands and her heavy tone that she was not lying. She took a shaky breath and pulled the blanket aside, showing him her arms again. The glowing silver marks pulsed faintly under her pale skin, curling like rivers of light. "These marks, they mean I am the heir of the seal," she said, her voice breaking on the last word. "Chosen not by people, but by the ancient council that ruled long before my time." Daniel frowned, struggling to understand. "Chosen, so your people were supposed to follow you?" Her lips trembled, and she nodded slowly. "Yes, but the council that rules now feared me, feared what these marks meant. So they declared me cursed, a danger, and sent the hunters to erase me." Her voice cracked on the word erase, and she turned her face away. Daniel's fists clenched, anger rising in his chest. "They left you in the mud, to die," he said bitterly. Solara flinched, her shoulders shaking. "I begged them. I begged my own blood. But they turned away. They said if I truly was chosen, I would survive on my own." Daniel's chest tightened. It explained the fear he had seen in the marketplace. People weren't just ignoring her, they were terrified of being near her, because standing close meant becoming a target, and the hunters showed no mercy. Solara wiped her face with trembling fingers, smearing dirt across her cheeks, her voice lowered to almost nothing. No one has touched me in months. No one has spoken to me without hate until you. She looked up at him, her violet eyes wet with tears. Why? She asked softly, her voice cracking. Why did you not walk away? Daniel froze at the question. He thought of the mud, the way she had looked at him with hopeless eyes. He thought of how the crowd had laughed, how they had turned away, and something in him had refused to be like them. I don't know, he admitted, his voice rough. Maybe because I couldn't stand to see you thrown away like trash. Maybe because I've been abandoned too once, and I know how it feels. Solara's lips parted in shock, her eyes wide. For a long time she only stared at him as if his words were something she had never imagined hearing. Slowly, her shoulders relaxed, the blanket slipping slightly. For the first time, a small sound left her lips, not a sob, not a whisper, but something close to a laugh, broken and fragile. Daniel's heart ached at the sound. He wanted to say more, to ease the pain written on her face, but a sharp noise from outside made them both stiffen. Boots again, voices carried through the wet morning air. The hunters had not left the city. They were still searching, and now closer than before, Solara's eyes filled with panic. They will not stop. They can sense the seal. The longer I stay, the faster they will find us. Daniel paced the small room, his mind racing. He could not fight them head on, not with their armor and weapons, but leaving her outside was no option. He turned back, to her, his jaw tight. Then we'll move, find another place, somewhere safer. Solara shook her head quickly. There is no safe place. They always find me. Her words were heavy with despair, as if she had already accepted her fate. Daniel crouched in front of her, his hands firm on her shoulders. Listen to me. I don't care who they are. I don't care how powerful. You're not alone anymore, do you understand? You're not. Her eyes widened at his words, her lips trembling. The glow of her mark seemed to pulse brighter for a moment, reacting to his touch. She gasped, pulling slightly back. They respond. To you, she whispered in shock. Daniel frowned, confused. Respond? Solara nodded, her breathing quick. The seal. It reacts to those who are bound to me. It should not react to a human, but... She broke off, staring at him as if he had just done the impossible. Before Daniel could ask, a crash sounded outside, the hunters breaking through, a nearby door. Shouts echoed through the street and the sound of heavy boots grew louder. Daniel's blood ran cold. They were out of time. He grabbed Solara's hand, pulling her to her feet. Her body wavered, still weak, but she leaned into him. We have to go, he said firmly. Solara looked at him, her violet eyes shining with both fear and something new. Hope. And for the first time since she had been abandoned, she nodded. As they stepped into the rain once more, Daniel felt it deep inside him. The secret she carried was bigger than either of them, and whatever these hunters wanted to destroy, he would not let them succeed. Rain poured harder as Daniel pulled Solara into the street. The city was waking, but the people moved quickly, their eyes lowered. No one wanted to be caught between the hunters and their prey. The glowing prints of armored boots stained the mud, leading in every direction. The hunters were close, closing the net around them. Solara clung to Daniel's arm, her steps unsteady, her silver hair stuck to her face, her glowing marks hidden under the blanket. Every corner they turned, Daniel felt eyes watching, shops closing shutters, strangers whispering. He knew the city would not help. If anything, they would point the hunters straight toward them. Where do we go? Daniel whispered, scanning the alley ahead. Solara shook her head weakly. There is no safe place. They will never stop. Her voice trembled with both fear and certainty. Daniel gritted his teeth. Then we make them stop. Before Solara could answer, a heavy voice echoed through the street. Human! Daniel froze, his blood running. Cold, 3 hunters stepped out of the mist, blocking the alley, their glowing weapons humming with deadly light. Their masks reflected the storm light. Faceless, merciless, the tallest raised his arm. "Hand her over. Do this and you may live." Daniel's grip tightened on Solara's hand. His voice came firm, though his heart pounded. "She stays with me." The hunters tilted their heads, the sound of metal grinding as they laughed. "Foolish human, do you think you matter? She is marked for death. Protect her, and you share her grave." Solara's body shook, her lips parting as if to beg him again to let her go. But Daniel stepped forward, placing himself between her and the hunters. His boots sank into the mud, his hands clenched into fists. "I've buried enough of myself in the mud already," he said coldly. "I won't leave her there too." The hunters moved in, their steps heavy, weapons humming louder. Daniel's mind raced. He had no blade, no gun, only his fists. He was outmatched, but he couldn't step aside. Not now, not after all she had told him. One hunter lunged forward, swinging his glowing blade. Daniel grabbed a broken pipe from the ground, raising it just in time. Sparks burst as metal struck metal. The shock, nearly tearing the pipe from his hands, his arms screamed in pain, but he pushed back, driving the hunter away for a moment. Solara gasped, her marks glowing faintly under the blanket. Her voice rose, trembling. "Daniel, stop. If they see the seal react to you, they will never let you live." But Daniel ignored her warning, his breath heavy, sweat and rain mixing on his face. He swung the pipe again, striking another hunter's mask with a sharp crack. The figure staggered, but only for a second before regaining balance. The tallest hunter stepped closer, his voice flat. "You fight well for a human, but strength will not change her fate." Daniel spat rainwater from his lips. "Maybe not," he growled, "but it changes mine." He swung again, desperate, forcing them back step by step. But the hunters moved like shadows, circling, tightening their grip. One struck him across the ribs, the glowing weapon burning through his jacket. Daniel cried out, dropping to one knee, the pipe slipping from his hands. Solara screamed, rushing forward before she could stop herself. She fell beside him, her hands glowing brighter as they touched his wound. For a moment, Daniel felt warmth spread through his body, the pain dulling. The hunters froze, their heads snapping toward the light. "The seal responds," one hissed. "It has chosen him too." Another growled. Daniel's eyes widened, confusion mixing with fear. Solara pulled her hands back, trembling. No, this cannot be. The seal only binds to blood of Valari, never a human." The hunters raised their weapons higher. If the seal binds him, then he must die as well. Daniel forced himself back to his feet. His body aching, he stood in front of Solara again, shielding her with his own body. His voice came ragged but strong. "Then you'll have to go through me first." For a moment, silence filled the rain-soaked alley. Even the hunters hesitated, as if the humans' defiance unsettled them. But then the leader raised his blade high. "So be it," he said coldly. Just as the blade came down, a distant horn echoed through the city. The hunters froze, their glowing weapons dimming slightly. The leader hissed, "Council enforcers, they arrive." With one last glare at Daniel, the hunters stepped back into the mist. "This is not over. We will return for both of you." The alley fell silent again, the storm softening to a drizzle. Daniel collapsed against the wall, his chest heaving. Solara knelt beside him, her hands trembling as she tried to wipe blood from his side. "You're insane," she whispered, tears filling her violet eyes. "You risked your life for me, and now the seal has bound itself to you. Do you understand what that means?" Daniel met her gaze, his voice rough but steady. "I don't care what it means. All I know is, I won't let them take you." Her lips trembled, her heart torn between fear and something deeper. For the first time, she reached out willingly, placing her glowing hand on his. "Then we are bound," she whispered, "whether we want it or not." And Daniel felt it. The bond, alive, dangerous but unbreakable. The hunters would return, stronger than before. But in that moment, he knew. He was no longer fighting only for survival. He was fighting for her. The horn's echo faded. But Daniel knew the silence would not last. The hunters had retreated for now, but they would return, stronger, ready. Every breath burned in his chest, his ribs still aching where the glowing blade had struck. Solara knelt close, her trembling hands hovering as if she wanted to heal him again. But she pulled back, whispering, "If I touch you again, the seal will glow brighter. It will call." "Them?" Daniel forced himself to stand, leaning against the wall for balance. "We can't stay here," he said, his voice rough. "They'll come back. We need to move now." Solara's violet eyes darted nervously toward the open street. "The hunters. They don't lose trails. No matter where we run, they will follow." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Then we go where they can't easily follow. Underground." Solara looked at him in confusion, but Daniel was already moving. He led her through narrow alleys, past dripping pipes and broken neon signs. The city above was alive with whispers, people watching from behind shutters, some eyes filled with pity, others with fear. Everywhere they went, Solara pulled the blanket tighter, hiding her faint glow. Finally, Daniel pushed open a rusted grate that led into the city's underbelly. A dark tunnel stretched ahead, filled with the smell of damp stone and oil. Solara hesitated at the entrance, her voice soft. "Are you sure? Even the guards avoid these tunnels." Daniel gave a faint smile. "That's why we'll be safe, at least for a little while." They descended into the darkness, the echo of their steps mixing with the distant drip of water. The tunnel walls glistened, the air heavy and cold. Solara's glowing marks faintly lit the path, casting strange shadows that danced across the walls. Daniel glanced at her, his chest tight. Even covered in mud and fear, she looked like something not of this world, too fragile and too powerful at once. Hours passed as they moved deeper. Solara grew weaker, her steps slowing. Daniel finally stopped, guiding her to a stone ledge where she could sit. "You need rest," he said firmly, though his own body screamed for the same. She shook her head, her voice trembling. "No, if I rest, they'll catch us." But her eyelids drooped, her hands trembling as she tried to stay upright. Daniel sat beside her, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. "Just a little while. I'll keep watch." She looked at him, violet, eyes shimmering in the faint light. For a moment she said nothing, then finally nodded. Her body leaned slightly against his, her breathing slow and uneven. Within minutes, exhaustion pulled her into sleep. Daniel sat still, his pipe clutched tightly in his hand. Every sound in the tunnel made him tense. The rustle of rats, the drip of water, the distant rumble of machinery above. But it wasn't just the hunters that haunted his thoughts. It was the seal, the way it had reacted to him, glowing under Solara's touch. What did it mean? Why him? As he pondered, a faint sound echoed from deeper in the tunnel, metal against stone, too steady to be natural. Daniel's heart raced. He leaned forward, peering into the darkness. Shapes moved. Small, quick, not hunters, but scavengers who lived in the city's belly. Their eyes gleamed in the dark, their voices hissing. Outsiders. Outsiders with light. Daniel stood, pipe ready. The scavengers crept closer, their thin bodies hunched, their weapons crude. Solara stirred, her marks flickering as she woke. Her eyes widened at the sight, fear filling her face. "They're feeders. They live on scraps and in blood." The scavengers lunged. Daniel swung the pipe, striking one across the jaw. Another leapt, claws out, but Solara raised her hand. A burst of silver light exploded from her mark, throwing the creature back. The tunnel filled with screeches as the scavengers scattered, retreating into the dark. Solara gasped, clutching her glowing arm. Her body shook from the effort. Daniel grabbed her shoulders, steadying her. "You saved me," he whispered, surprised. At the strength hidden in her fragile frame, her lips trembled. "No, I exposed us. They'll feel the seal's echo now." As if on cue, a deep metallic hum vibrated through the tunnel walls. Solara's face went pale. "The hunters," she whispered, her voice shaking. "They've found the trail again." Daniel pulled her to her feet, his grip firm. "Then we keep moving," he said, determination burning in his voice. Her body leaned against him. Weak but unwilling to stop, step by step, they pushed deeper into the underbelly, the echoes of pursuit growing louder behind them. At last, the tunnel opened into a vast underground chamber. Old machinery towered above them, glowing faintly with forgotten power. Daniel's eyes widened. This could be a place to hide, he muttered. Solara shook her head, her voice urgent. No, this is worse. This place was built by my people long ago. If the seal reacts here, it will awaken what sleeps. Before Daniel could ask what she meant, the chamber shuddered. The faint glow of Solara's marks spread into the walls, lighting up ancient runes. Machines groaned awake, gears turning after. Years of silence. Solara staggered back, terror in her eyes. No, it's too late. The seal has called to the old power. And from the far side of the chamber, a massive door began to rise. The sound of hunters echoed behind them, but Daniel's eyes were fixed ahead. Whatever lay beyond that door, it was older than the hunters, older than Solara's betrayal, and now it was awake. The underground chamber trembled as the massive door continued to rise. Dust rained down from the ceiling, gears grinding after centuries of silence. Solara's glowing marks pulsed brighter, threads of silver light stretching from her skin. Into the ancient walls, her breath came fast, panic in her violet eyes. No, I didn't mean to awaken it. The seal, it's reacting on its own. Daniel pulled her close, his grip tight. What's behind that door? He demanded. Her voice broke. An ancient guardian. My people built it to protect the seal of inheritance. It awakens only when the chosen one is threatened. The rumble of boots echoed through the tunnel. The hunters' voices carried closer, cold and sharp. The seal is near. End this now. Daniel's heart pounded. On one side, the hunters closing in, their weapons ready. On the other, a door opening to something unknown, something Solara herself feared. He clenched his jaw, torn between danger and the unknown. The door finally ground open, and from the darkness beyond, a shape emerged. A towering construct of stone and metal, its eyes glowing like molten suns. It moved with the weight of ages, each step shaking the ground. Solara's face went pale, her body trembling. It will judge. It will decide if we are worthy to live. Daniel stared up at the giant, his pipe useless in his hand. The guardian's deep voice rumbled through the chamber. Bearer of the seal, and the one bound to her, step forward. The hunters burst into the chamber at that moment, weapons raised, but the guardian's gaze snapped toward them. With one sweep of its arm, a shockwave of energy hurled them against the walls, their armor sparking. They struggled but could not rise, trapped like insects under its gaze. Daniel realized then, it wasn't the hunters he had to fear. It was the choice the guardian demanded. Solara clutched his arm, her voice breaking. Daniel, it will test you. If you fail, it will kill us both. Her eyes filled with tears. You don't have to do this, you can still walk away. The bond will break if you leave me now. Daniel froze, his chest tight. The hunters' voices hissed from the shadows. Leave her, human, save yourself, she is cursed, doomed, walk away and live. He looked at Solara, mud-stained, broken, trembling, yet still glowing with a strength she didn't see in herself. He remembered her lying in the street, abandoned, ignored. He remembered the first time he touched her face, the first spark of trust in her eyes, and he knew his answer. I won't leave, he said firmly, not now, not ever. Solara gasped, her lips trembling. The guardian's molten eyes burned brighter. Then prove it. It rumbled. It raised its hand, light gathering into a sphere. The ground split, forming two paths, one glowing bright, safe, easy. The other, dark, filled with shadows, sharp stones, and fire. The guardian's voice thundered, walk the path of ease and you may live free, but the bond will shatter and the bearer will die. Walk the path of pain, and your suffering will bind the seal, forever protecting her, but at great cost to yourself. Daniel's fists tightened. There was no real choice, not for him. He stepped toward the dark path, his body already aching. Solara cried out, grabbing his arm, Don't! You'll be destroyed. But he only gave her a faint smile, I'd rather be destroyed than leave you alone in the mud again. He stepped onto the dark path. Instantly, pain shot through his body, fire burning across his skin. Each step felt like knives cutting into his flesh. The hunters watched in silence, their laughter dying in their throats. Even they could not endure such a trial. Solara sobbed, trying to pull away from him, but the bond dragged her forward too. Her marks blazed, her light joining his pain. Together they walked, step by agonizing step. Daniel's breath came ragged, his body shaking, but he never let go of her hand. At last they reached the end, collapsing onto the stone floor. The guardian loomed above them, its voice softer now. Your choice is made. The bond is sealed. You are one. Solara's body glowed with brilliant silver light, the marks spreading across her skin like fire. Daniel's chest burned with the same glow, a mark forming over his heart. He gasped, his body trembling. But when he looked at her, he saw her eyes, no longer hopeless but filled with awe and tears. You did this and for me, she whispered. Daniel smiled weakly. No, for us. The guardian bowed its massive head. Then so it shall be. Together you will face the hunters, the council and the fate of worlds. With that, the giant stepped back into the shadows, the massive door sealing once more. The chamber fell quiet, the hunters crawling weakly from where they had been thrown, but they no longer laughed. They looked at Daniel and Solara with fear. The seal has chosen, one hissed. No force can break it now. They retreated into the shadows, vanishing. Into the tunnels the storm above had passed, but a new storm was coming. Daniel helped Solara to her feet, his hand steady despite the pain. She leaned into him, her voice soft. From the mud to this. You changed everything. Daniel looked at her, his jaw set. Then let's change more. Together. And with that, they walked out of the chamber, bound not just by fate, but by choice. The hunters would return, the council would rise against them, but Daniel knew one truth carved into his very bones. He had chosen her, and nothing in the galaxy would make him let go.